Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. I'm your host, Martinique Brown. I'm so excited that you have decided to tune into the show today. Today, I actually have author Anna J. Small Roseboro on the show, and she has written a book called Experience Poems and Pictures, Poetry That Paints, Pictures That Speak, 2019. Anna, thank you so much for being on the show.
Delighted to be here, Martinique. Thanks for inviting me.
You are welcome. So, guys, if this is your first time ever tuning into the show, make sure you go ahead and shout us out. Let us know you're in the virtual world. Also, we would love for you to go ahead and share this video now so that more people will know about Anna and her book as well as the show. Another thing is I have taken all the work out of this for you. So all of Anna's contact information is listed in the description box. If you're watching this show and you say, man, I really like that book, make sure that you go to Anna's website, or you can purchase her book from the Amazon link. But remember, all the links are listed in the description box. So can you just tell our viewers just a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I am a wife of over 50 years.
Wow, that's so good. Clap it up for that.
Mother of three. I am an educator. I've taught, since 1967. I've taught in St. Louis, Missouri, upstate New York, Western Massachusetts, Southern California, and here back in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Wow. And since I retired, I spend a lot of time working with teachers who are new to the profession, those who are just starting out, or those who have just changed grades that they're teaching. And so that's sort of the way I keep going after I've stopped going.
So are you the type of person that is never going to stop working?
I think so.
Okay.
What the computer has done for me is given me an opportunity to go more places without leaving my chair. And that's one of the things I do enjoy about the work that I can do now, is that many of the young writers, young teachers with whom I work live all over the country. And just as you and I, Martinique, are meeting here tonight, tomorrow night I'll be meeting with young teachers who won awards, and they'll be presenting this year at their first national conference. And we get to do this online, preparing them for that. And so I don't think I'm going to retire with a capital R. I will just sit in my chair and talk to people like I'm talking to you.
Definitely. So now I want to give a shout out to Cheryl LeGrand. She is actually tuning into the show. Thank you, Cheryl, for watching. Cheryl, if you could go ahead and share this video now, then that would be great. And she also said that is such a blessing, Anna, for you being married for over 50 years. That's so good.
I agree.
So can you just tell our viewers why you decided to write Experience Poems and Pictures?
This book is sort of a culmination of many things. As a teacher, I often encourage students to write. And sometimes if they couldn't think of what to write, I'd show them pictures and ask them to imagine you're in that picture. Or suppose this picture is illustrating a story that you want to tell. And so that usually inspired them to write. But a few years ago, I started writing myself a little bit more than I had in the past. And one of the ladies in my writing group enjoyed one of the poems, and she said, you should publish it. So what does that mean? And for this particular book, I decided to combine what I did as a teacher and what I have learned to do since. And so I gathered some of the poems that I have been writing. And then I invited the art teacher from the school where I used to teach to share some of the pictures that she has been posting online. And then I contacted the teacher who currently is there, and she says, I have students who would love to have their work available to a larger audience. And so I collected 16 of my poems. 29 artists submitted paintings, pictures of their artwork for my book. And I said, well, I can't do all of their paintings in this little book. So selected 2 paintings by each artist. And I said, well, no, I can't try to match their artwork to my poems. Mm-hmm. So I came up with another way of doing it, sort of innovative. And in this case, I grouped my poems, but I put the pictures in the book alphabetically by artist. And then part 3 is a section where I invite those who look at the poems, look at the paintings, to write their own poems, to create their own art. But the idea is not mine. Mm-hmm. It came from Plutarch, one of the philosophers that many of you have heard of. And he said, painting is silent poetry, and poetry is painting that speaks. And I said, that's been my experience. Maybe I will use that as inspiration for pulling together this collection. And it has been great fun interacting with artists across the country, from coast to coast, not every state, but also from the country of Sri Lanka. She said, you want to use it? Help yourself. I'd be glad to have more exposure to an audience in the United States. And so Experience Poems and Pictures is a collection of 16 of my poems and 2 pictures each from 29 authors, teenagers, adults, casual artists, professional artists. And can I tell you one more thing, Martinique? Mm-hmm. When a couple of my friends saw the book, they were inspired to share it with their students who speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. And so one of my friends said, well, why don't you see if someone will translate a portion of your book into Spanish? And that's probably been the most exciting thing in the past couple of weeks, in that a local Spanish teacher did translate this last part of my book into Spanish. And AP English teachers are using the artwork to inspire students to write in English, but also Spanish speakers are finding that they can look at the pictures. You can look at pictures in any language, mm-hmm. but being able to explore the paintings in their own language. And finally, the AP Spanish teacher says, I can get my students to write their own stories based on these pictures using the instructions that you now have in your book in Spanish. And so my idea to get my poems out has expanded to now that those who speak other languages are being able to access the poems and the pictures, and I'm excited.
But can you read for us one of your poems?
As a matter of fact, I'd be glad to. The one that I'd like to read is one that I wrote after hearing other people read their own poetry. One of the conferences I was attending, the teachers brought in poems from their high school students, and I was in tears at the power of their work. And this is a poem I drafted at that time, and I included as the first poem in my book. It's called Words, Words, Words. Words stir me when I hear them, when I read them, when I write them, and when I speak them. Words urge me to keep listening, to keep reading, to keep writing, to keep speaking. Let me hear you so I can know you. Let me speak so you can know me. Prodigiously stirring words help me know you. And viscerally urging words help me know me. Thank you.
Step it up. So now, where did you get inspiration from to write that poem?
This particular one, the inspiration came from my hearing teachers share the poetry of their students. I happened to be at a conference in Northern California, and 2 young teachers had offered their 10th graders, I think they were, to write about their experiences and their observations, who they were, what they had experienced, and what life was like for them. And the way that they wrote the poems stirred me, moved me, like I said, moved me to tears. And this is also one of the reasons I entitled the book Experience Poems. It's sort of a play on words where I write about my experiences, but I also hope that those who read the poems experience them for themselves. But third, and perhaps most important, that they begin to write their own experiences so they can share them with those who are interested in what life is like and how they see life in the way they want to write about
Definitely, definitely. So now, how did you become interested in writing poetry?
it. It all started in a summer program for teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to become a better teacher. And often teachers take classes at various universities over the summer. And that's what I did. And this particular program required that we write every day. In the morning, we would hear presentations on how we could become better writing teachers. But in order to become a better writing teacher, they wanted us to experience the lessons that we were going to give to our students. And so every day we had to write. And every afternoon we had to share our writing with other teachers in the summer program. And in this group of 5 or 6 people, we just called them our writing group. And that's when I started the writing and found out that some people liked it. But when I got back to school that year, I began to put into practice. The program is called the National Writing Project, that talks about writing as a process, that we draft first, that we share our writing, that we revise it multiple times. And as I began to write along with my students, I found that they were interested. And as they saw me writing, struggling to try to find the words to express what I saw, what I experienced, they began to write more. And so that's really how it started, sort of like a challenge to my students. And it made me understand what it's like to write on demand, where a teacher gives you an assignment, you've got to start it. And after a while, they began to look forward to, what are we going to learn about her today? Because if they read their poems aloud, I had to read mine aloud. If I asked them to use a particular strategy for writing, imagery or whatever, they said, well, can you do it? I'll try, that kind of thing. But my writing really started as an attempt to become a better teacher.
That's excellent. So, how did you even become comfortable with sharing your poetry?
I can't say that I have become comfortable. I have begun to understand the power of poetry. And sometimes by doing what I ask other people to do, I would say feel like I am being honest. And because if you've taught middle school and high school, at one time I was teaching grades 7, 9, and 12. And you get accustomed to reading your poems to your students. Even though you're nervous, you just do it because this is what we ask them to do. And so I can't say I've ever not been nervous. I have been willing to share because I want other people to feel the same way.
That's good. It's good. I feel that kids may be the best ones to get your feet wet because kids, they don't lie and their facial expressions don't lie. And so if you can stand in front of them, you probably could just stand in front of everybody.
Maybe yes, maybe
Uh,
maybe no. But I do enjoy the opportunity to share what I've written, but
mhm,
also to inspire, encourage others to do the same, because it's a way of processing
mhm. That's
life.
good. That's good. So now Doug said he knows Lester.
Doug says he knows what?
He knows Lester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. He's an international, I wouldn't say internationally known.
Uh-huh.
This man's artwork is in the museum in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
It's in the Henry Ford, not the Gerald R. Ford Museum here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told him I was doing my book, he said, "Sure, I'll be glad to share a
That's
couple of
excellent.
my pictures in for your book." So I'm
Good.
excited.
That is good. So now, do you also speak at spoken words?
Not as at spoken word with a capital SP. I have done some poetry readings, I would say around town, um, at the one of the local bookstores, independent bookstores, would invite poets to come in and do poetry readings, and
Mhm.
I've done it for that. And the Michigan has a Midwestern group of poets who gather to read poetry, and I've been invited to do that. And at the schools,
Okay. Okay.
February, the National Council of Teachers has National Council of Teachers has what they call an African American read-in, and they encourage us as educators to provide opportunities for students to experience poetry written by and about African Americans. And
Mm.
so I've done assemblies for students reading poetry,
Okay.
sometimes my own, sometimes that of others.
Okay. Okay. So now, would you like to read another one of your poems?
If you insist. One of the things that has happened since I've been able to work from home is to participate in a program called a 5-day writing challenge. In that case, a friend has teachers post prompts for 5 days, and we are encouraged to try to write a poem based on the prompt. And one of the prompts last spring said, if there were someone from history that you could meet, who would that be? More importantly, what would they tell you? What would you learn from this person? And I said, well, this is April, this is Poetry Month. What African American do I know from history that would give me some advice that I could use today? And I thought of Phyllis Wheatley. Some people are familiar with her. She was brought to the United States as a slave, and she happened to live in Boston, Massachusetts. And the family who purchased her had a daughter about Phyllis's age. And so Phyllis was able to sit in on lessons with her. She learned English, but she also learned Greek and Latin, and she wrote classical poetry. When she began to publish her poetry, people questioned that you can't do that. In fact, there was even a court case because they thought that she was publishing poetry under her name, but she hadn't written it. And I said, what would Phyllis Wheatley tell me if I went back? And this is the poem. When they challenge your intellect, girl, fight back. When they say you didn't write that, I said, really? What does it lack? They shouted back, it's because you're Black. Blacks can't write like that. Oh, yeah, I said, maybe not just like that. Watch my spoke. You better stay woke, because I'm not through with you or with you. I kept on writing, and I hope you do too. They'll believe when they see your intellect shine through. That melanin is only the color of skin, not indicative at all of what you can do. So just keep on writing. And when you're through, they'll have to acknowledge what you truly did do. That's what Phyllis Wheatley told me.
I like that one. That's a really good one, because I feel that it really just helps you to just identify who you are,
Mhm.
and it helps you to just personalize it, and that's
That's one of the things that happened with that. One of the other advantages of being retired is I have an opportunity to go to various schools. And last spring, one of the teachers here invited girls from, I think, about third grade to 12th grade for a full day workshop. It's called 3G, grade school, girls grade school to graduate school. And that's one of the poems that I shared with them. And at the end of the day, 5 of the girls performed that poem with me.
Wow.
Exactly. They got into it and I got into it. But during that session, they also wrote their own poems about who they used to be, who they are now, and who they see themselves to be in 10 to 15 years. And so, an opportunity to share my poems, but also introduce them to a historical person and to write their own poems.
That's good. And I really like the fact that it's just short and sweet. And, it's just one of those quick reminders,
Mm-hmm.
of who you are and who you can become. So I know that you actually written quite a few other books.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell us one of your bestsellers?
Well, one of the best sellers now is called a book called More About Writing. A few years ago, I was able to participate in a program called uh, the National Board Certification Program, which is a national certification for teachers. And once I acquired that certification, I was invited to write a book to walk a teacher through the entire year of school if they did not have an on-site mentor. That book came out in 2010. And over the years, the publisher, who happened to be Roman and Littlefield Education, asked me to update the book over time. And this spring, More About Writing was the book that came out. And it included some of the things I've talked about today. How do we encourage students to write? How do we encourage them to participate in activities where they're giving and receiving feedback? And I guess I'm most excited about the fact that my daughter, Roseboro, has just decided to become a teacher. And one of the things that she is finding useful teaching at the college level is my new book. And she just bought 2 copies last weekend for 2 teachers on the staff at Northern Michigan University. And so I don't know whether it's a bestseller book yet, but it's one that I do believe will become one because it's based on the experiences that I've had as an educator, teaching in 5 states, teaching grades 7, 12, and teaching at Grand Valley State University, and at Calvin College then, but it's now Calvin University. And it's called More About Writing. And it's available through Amazon. It's available on my website. And most importantly, it's available for anyone. Homeschool teachers are finding it useful because it assumes that you want your students to learn. That's it.
So now you actually wrote that book because you were teaching somebody and you just felt, this is some good stuff. I'm gonna put it in a book.
I can't say that's the reason I did it. One of the jobs that I had when I was in California, I was the department chair. And I don't know how many brand new teachers came through our school. And I was basically saying the same things every time we had new teachers. There were the same issues that arose no matter what their education was. If you've never taught in a classroom, it's not the same thing as sitting in the class as a student. It's different. And so the book is really a compilation of things that I learned as a classroom teacher, but things that I found were useful to those who are just starting out in the profession.
Definitely. So, as a retired teacher that has published multiple books,
Mm-hmm.
you also have a coaching service called
Mm-hmm.
Getting Started, Getting Going. Can you just tell us more about the services that you offer?
Yes, I'd be glad to. One of the opportunities that I had to talk about my books here in Grand Rapids was through an organization called Hook a Sister Up. And that is a program designed to encourage people to do things, start their own businesses, to share with others what they know and are able to do. And at one of them, I was invited to do a workshop for teachers who are just not necessarily teachers, but mostly women who want to write, have a story, but are not sure how to get started or how to get going. And because my experience is in process writing, I started this service. If you're interested, give me a call. We'll meet at the library. We will meet online. We'll meet at a restaurant. Share your work. I'll give you some feedback, give you some guidelines of what to do next. And over the past 3 or 4 years, about 6 or 7 authors have worked with me with that. And talking about online, one of the young men I'm working with now lives in France. We meet online. He shares his work with me. We meet, we talk about it. I give him feedback, etc. So if you're getting started, writing the first time, you have a story. You're not sure what to do next. That's my business. Coaching you through it, encouraging you to tell your story, sharing with you some of the strategies that professional writers use to make their stories readable for a specific audience.
So now, what does process writing mean?
Process writing is a term that I learned about through the National Writing Project, but it's really the way most professional writers do write. The first thing is get your words on paper. In fact, one of the sections of my book is get it written, then get it right. And the process is pre-writing, thinking about what you want to write, putting the words on paper, inviting multiple people to read and give you feedback, revise for different purposes, revise for a specific audience, then get it edited. Don't bother correcting spelling and grammar and all of that the first 2 or 3 times you revise. And once people understand that the process, not only does it work, but it's the way most people do write, then they sort of relax and say, okay, ooh, I should change that? I said, yes. Why? I said, who are you writing for? Is this a professional group? What age are they? What experience do they have? How, what do you want them to know and be able to do when they finish reading what you've written? And that's the process. Pre-write, draft, revise, edit, publish.
So let me think for a minute. Because I guess I always thought the publisher, in your experience, what do you feel like the role of a publisher is?
The publishing houses have multiple roles. Okay. And depending on the publishing house to which you go, what you get from them varies. The issue is that there are so many what they call vanity publishers who will publish anything that you submit. That many new writers say, oh, I can go online. I can go to any of multiple self-publishing companies and get my book published. Some publishers will only publish books that come to them through agents. Agents will only send forward books that they believe will sell. Books that will sell are well written. If you don't have a reputation, you may not get an agent to send your book to a publisher. And so most of the writers that I work with are first-time writers. They may have a local following, let's say, in their business, in their community, but they have not had experience writing before. And so they said, oh, I'll just publish it myself. You can publish anything. but it may not sell if it's not well written.
Mhm.
And so publishers will offer packages. Some will say, we will accept your draft. We will give it 2 or 3 revisions, but you pay us. Sometimes the package is up to, $1,500, $2,000. Sometimes it's up to $5,000, depending on how much publicity they will give you.
Mhm.
And so you said it depends on how much you're willing to pay. And it's either upfront money. If a publisher does all the work, your royalties are what 10%, maybe 15%. On the other hand, if you self-publish, your royalties can be, 30, 40%. But it has to be well written in order to sell. And
Definitely.
that's one of the things that publishers do, or writing coaches like I do, assist people in getting their work written well enough to sell well enough to the audience for whom they're writing.
So would you say that you actually help that individual
Mm-hmm,
up to the point where it's ready to be I guess printed,
mm-hmm.
and then it's up to them to get that publisher. Is that
I,
correct?
I've done both.
Okay.
Uh, some of the ladies with whom I've worked, lady and men, some of the authors with whom I work have a draft, and they just want some advice of whether or not the book that they think they have written will meet the needs that they have in mind and for the audience for whom they're writing. And so we may work back and forth, 2 or 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, until they're satisfied that they've reached that point, and then they will take their book to a publisher.
Hmm.
Some take them to a publisher who will then create the cover for them, who will do the formatting for them, who will do the marketing for them, but they pay
Hmm.
for that. Others decide they want to self publish. 2 or 3 of the ladies have done picture books. And so the job that I have provided for them is helping them find graphic illustrators for their books and matching the pictures to the text. Who's your audience? Are they readers? Are they non-readers? What message do you want to get across? What kind of pictures do you need? And so the tasks vary depending on the goal of the writer.
Definitely. And I can definitely attest to Anna's services, because she was actually my editor for my calendar.
Okay.
The reason why I had to reach out to her is because, I thought I had a print ready calendar, and I sent it to my printing company. And he said, I think that you have, he said, I think you have a really good product, but I think you need somebody else to look over this. And I'm thinking, no, I'm just ready to get it printed. So I reached out to Anna, and she marked it up. But that's what the great thing about it is. I know that this calendar is like perfect, because it's not only my eyes, but I had a retired teacher to look at it, and she does this for a living. And I definitely appreciate you for being on the show and just letting us know more about your book, Experience, Poems, and Pictures: Poetry That Paints, Pictures That Speak, 2019. I hope that you guys have a great night, and we will talk to you all later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.